This guide will be sectioned into two main parts. The first part is going to be about explaining the basics of the game, and the second part will be about explaining why you should or should not buy this game. Please note, I am a beginner player to Dead by Daylight, however, I think I'm better suited to write a review rather than a pro player who gets into too much detail. Both sections in this review are important, but if you already know the basics, just skip to the second part. So, without further ado, let's explain the game mechanics. In Dead by Daylight, you play either as the killer or one of the 4 survivors. If you've never heard of this game before, I know you have, because 90% of the people watching this review have already seen YouTubers play it, streamers play it. I know, I'm in the same shoes as you. If you've never heard of this game before, it's not that self-explanatory whatsoever, so bear with me. The killer is hunting the survivors, but instead of trying to hit them as many times as possible to kill them, you gotta think of each game as a sort of trial, where the killer is trying to sacrifice the survivors to a giant spider god called the Entity. And to do that, you go around the map as a killer. You have to hit survivors at least twice, so they go on the floor. And after that you can place the survivors on hooks, where they will be sacrificed after a time to the spider god. Other survivors, of course, can save you if you're on a hook, but if you get hooked too many times, you get instantly sacrificed. If you are playing as a survivor, you go around the map trying to power generators, which is actually pretty easy. You just click on the generators and sometimes you get quick time events. But after you powered around 5 generators, you can power the exit gates and leave the map, winning the game. Now, of course, by default, survivors are trying to escape and killers are trying to sacrifice the survivors, but really each game is based on a point system, where as a killer you get more points for trying to chase survivors, hitting them, sacrificing them. As a survivor you get points for escaping, powering generators, healing other survivors. At the end of a match, depending on how many points you got, you can either rank up or rank down. Similarly to Hearthstone, you go from rank 20 down to rank 1. This is essentially the very base of the game. Everything else builds upon these facts laid out. There are different killers with different abilities. One killer can place down traps, whilst another can throw hatchets at people. And survivors have their own abilities as well. At the end of a game, the points that you've acquired can be used on a sort of talent tree to acquire newer and better abilities, as well as items and add-ons for those items. For instance, survivors can find a toolbox that increases repair speed on generators, or a flashlight that can blind killers. These perks, which are similar to passive abilities, the items and the add-ons for these items, essentially make the game very, very replayable. Every match is going to be different, and it's very similar to a MOBA game like League of Legends or Dota, where you use different builds for your character. Now that you know the basics of Dead by Daylight, let me explain a very important thing to you. If you do decide to pick up this game, every single match you will have will fall into one of these 2 categories, okay? The first category is where the players that play with you if you're a survivor, or against you if you're a killer, these players will be on your skill level. You will all be new players, and this will provide a very fun environment to not only learn the game but also learn your character you are playing. For instance, I've had a game as Huntress, and I was extremely anxious because I knew that it would be very hard to hit survivors with my hatchet throw. Even though I missed a lot of the throws, even though I wasn't optimal whatsoever, neither were the survivors. In that game, I actually managed to get 3 kills, and the last survivor managed to escape. That game is actually very exemplary. Many times, if the survivors are on the same skill level as me, I would get around 2 or 3 kills, and then the last survivor would get the hatch. Now, on the other hand, the other type of match that you will get actually quite often is when the survivors are at a much higher skill level than you are. I've had a match. It was actually the second time I played Trapper ever, so you can tell that I didn't know much. 4 survivors instantly joined and they all had the Claudette survivor skin. Now if you watched any amount of Dead by Daylight games so far, you know that Claudettes are generally really toxic, and it's probably the best skin to have for a survivor because it's very hard to see. Not only that, but they also had flashlights, and I didn't know any better. I'm a completely new player. When you pick up a survivor to carry them to a hook, someone flashes you with a flashlight, you instantly drop them. Now when that happened to me, I did what any normal gamer would do. I tried to counter this by hitting the person with the flashlight and then looking away and picking up the person, but the flashlight that they had was actually at such a high level, I think, that even after a second I just got blinded and I dropped the survivor. It felt like there was nothing I could do. And what ensued after this was the most embarrassing thing that ever happened to me. I mean, if I was still in school, this is equivalent to, I don't know, someone pulling your pants down in front of your crush. Because I managed to trap one of the survivors in the basement area, where it's actually very hard for them to save anybody. The 3 remaining teammates rushed the basement to try to rescue their friend. And even though I tried my best, obviously I missed a few shots because I'm new, I managed to get one of them down. I picked her up to carry her down to the basement to maybe get 2 kills. One of the survivors actually manages to get trapped in one of the 2 traps I left. And the last survivor was using her flashlight. I had to look away, and even though I knew I placed a second trap and I didn't want to get trapped inside my own trap because I knew that I would drop the person, there was nothing I could really do simply because I placed a trap in the middle. I had to look away from the flashlight, and there were just too many of them. At the end, all 4 of them escaped. And of course, if I was a better skilled player, that was a really noobish mistake by me. But do you know why I don't really blame myself, guys? It's because I'm new. I am a noob. And, you know, I'm gonna make these mistakes 100 times in the future. I know this. And of course, the common counter to this is people saying, get good. And even if you have an odd match every now and then where you get completely crushed, you should just learn from your mistakes and get on with it. But quite frankly, if a large number of the games that you play are like that, like soul-crushingly difficult and bad, the game is just not worth playing anymore. The game is much more fun if you have a match like in the first example where the survivors have the same skill level as you. And similarly, I talk a lot about the killer, but if you are a survivor, there's nothing you can do against a very good killer. Now, of course, a lot of people are going to call me out on my bullshit. What do you mean you can't do anything against a good killer as a survivor? Of course you can, two-siders. Well, yeah, but when you are going to start playing the game, even if you watch countless hours of DBD, you are just going to be a new player, and the game is vastly different at the higher ranks than it is on the lower ranks. Now, in conclusion, I don't know what type of person or player you are, viewer, but this is what I would say to you. Do not play this game. Do not buy it. If you still want to play it, if you still want to buy it, despite me saying no, then go for it. That probably means that you really want to play it, and you know, you should. But if you are a similar sort of person or player to me, maybe you have anxiety, maybe you just don't really like toxicity, definitely do not pick up this game. The players there are very, very toxic, even at the very beginning of the game, and new players get eaten alive. Now, if you do decide to buy this game, despite my naysaying, I recommend you pick it up when it's on a sale. Every now and then you can play the game free. Last week there was an event which allowed you to play for free, and the game was also 50% off. If you do buy the game, I recommend you buy the Halloween edition, which is like an extra $2, but you get the killer Michael Myers. And that's actually another problem with this game. If you do decide to play this and you want to climb onto very, very high ranks, you will need to buy all the DLC for it, and there's a lot of DLC, and it costs a lot of money. You need to level up your killers to a high level, and that's when they can share each other's perks. And a lot of the times you will need a killer's perk that is in a DLC if you want to have any sort of chance against good survivors. Well, that's it. I hope you found this review helpful. Despite my own naysaying, I'm still going to play the game. Might even make some videos on it. And even though I don't really get upset or, you know, toxic in games, I don't think the game is for me personally. And if you do have anxiety, don't feel the need to play games that worsen it. Just do stuff that you enjoy. I'll catch you guys later.